Hi, everyone. My name is Mel Robertson, and I'd like to welcome you to Happiness is Your Own Damn Fault. And what we're talking about is how to drop the baggage, increase your frequency, and live a blissful life. And now I decided to put this summit together because I want you to know that happiness is equally available to every single one of us, no matter what circumstances you've endured. So no matter what you've been through, you can still choose happiness now. Happiness is your birthright. It is your natural state of being underneath all the baggage you've been dragging around with you for all these years. So what I wanted to do was interview people who are truly happy and get them to share with you their secrets on how they let go of the past, stopped worrying about the future, and started living their bliss. And today I'm excited to welcome Debbie Lacy. She is a certified life coach with a Master of Social Work degree from the University of Maryland. After a career that spans social psychology research, clinical social work, and non-profit supervision and management, Debbie launched her full-time coaching and consulting practice in 2003. Debbie is the author of Ready, Set, Manifest, a handbook for the in-betweens and leaps in life. She is a practitioner at Higher Wellness in Bellevue, Washington, where she provides individual coaching sessions and workshops. Debbie uses intuitive, to-the-point methods to help clients make clear decisions and coach themselves to new beginnings. Her gift is in bridging the practical with the sacred. Debbie and her husband live in Kirkland, Washington with their son and 2 dogs, and she can be found at www.debbielacy.com. Welcome, Debbie. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited and really honored to have been invited here, so thanks.
Well, it's my pleasure that you're here. So before we get started, do you want to just take a few minutes and just share with our audience a little bit more about you and how you came to do the work that you do?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my first career was in social work and social psychology research. And, I had spent my early years gearing up for that profession, and I invested a lot of time and money to get my degrees and do my internships and all of that. And I quickly found as I got into that career that I really wasn't happy at all. It was highly stressful for me. It was just basically not a good fit, even though I believed so strongly in the values and the work itself. But me in that work was not a good fit. So I was truly, truly unhappy, and it took me years of kind of maneuvering my way into different kinds of social work positions before I finally realized that there really wasn't a way for me to do that work, no matter if I was doing the direct service or if I was managing others, and it didn't really seem to matter. I really wasn't happy. So that, that began a process of figuring out what do I want, and a really frightening realization that here I've spent several years and all this time, money, gearing up for this profession that is no longer going to be in my future. So I know many of the listeners can probably relate to this.
Yeah.
It's like when you end up where you are and you don't like where you are, and suddenly you have no idea what that next step is going to be, and it's very scary. So I was so blessed and fortunate. I had a former colleague of mine who had gone on to be a life coach, and this was 12, 13 years ago. I didn't know what the heck it was, but I was curious, and she said, hey, I'm getting my certification. I need to do some pro bono work. Can I work with you? And I said, sure, and I just fell in love with it. And within 2 months, I had signed up for my own coach training program to be certified, and everything started happening from there. And in less than a year from starting working with her, I had launched my own business. So that's the short story. It was not easy. I leapt before looking in many ways and was not really prepared for that leap, but it was the best thing I've ever done. As scary as it was and as many mistakes as I made, I have never been happier, and I've never looked back.
I think that's really important, and something that I noticed that you talked about is that you had to go to many different positions in the social work field before you even realized that it really wasn't for you, and I think that that's important to talk about because so many of our listeners are out there, and, you know, it's about exploring and trying different things in order to get the contrast to find out what you do really want, and it was in those changing positions that you did that created and started the process of you beginning to ask yourself, well, what is it that I really want? That was the process that started that whole questioning.
That's so true. And I really look back at that time of trying out different positions within the same field as taking the baby steps that I needed. I needed at each step to say, okay, I'm capable of taking a little risk here, and let me see what that feels like, and oh, that wasn't quite right still, so let me try something new yet again, and that wasn't quite right. And it really, all those little steps prepared me for the bigger leap, even though it was hard, and I look back and think of many ways I could have made that easier. I do really feel like those little steps that I made in those transitions were all part of the bigger scheme of preparing me for what was to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that you said, too, is that you made a lot of mistakes along the way, but the bottom line is, the end result is you're still happy. You're still full of joy, even making those mistakes along the way. So I just want our listeners to understand that mistakes are part of the process. Like, that's how we learn and grow. So I think that was a huge thing that you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of being whole. You know, when we fail, when we have a loss, we're not less than. We're whole. We're experiencing and living part of the whole human experience. So, hey, how cool is that? We get to be whole people. So, you know, our failures, our inadequacies, our vulnerabilities, that's what makes us whole. And each one of those experiences is an initiation of sorts into this whole of life. So it's just part of it.
Yeah, and because life would get pretty boring if everything just went our way all hunky-dory all the time and there was no struggle or challenge. It'd just be really boring.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself. Now, you have a model called Ready, Set, Manifest, and it's different than a lot of models out there. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. It's similar in the sense that, you know, there are other models of transition where you move through phases or seasons, and that's pretty, you know, well established and accepted that when you're going through a big transition that there are different phases that you go through. But my take on it is a little different because where mine starts, a lot of those models start in something called, you know, darkness or the void or the wilderness, which are very appropriate descriptions. But I call my initial phase ready because I believe that in that phase you're not really stuck, that you are actually getting ready. And it is the most powerful, most sacred part of the cycle is when you absolutely have no idea what you're going to do next and everything becomes stripped away. And that darkness does come in, and the questioning and the fear and all of that. And it is such a precious, precious time. It's awful to be in it. I'm not going to, you know, sugarcoat it at all, but it's the awfulness that is required. It's actually part of what you're meant to get is to maneuver through that, find your way from the beginning to end of that so that you get everything you need for the next step. And too often what people do is they find that incredibly uncomfortable, and they're not able to hang out with that discomfort long enough to get the gems and the insights and the lessons. And so they will leap out of there at the first chance they can get. And this will sometimes look like, you know, a new relationship with the same person, basically, that you just left.
Right.
Or a new job that might be giving you more money, but it's really what I call lateral move because it's still not giving you that joy and that fulfillment. So a lot of times people will just get so uncomfortable with that unknowing that they will leap onto the very first thing that presents itself, and 6 months later, they're back where they started. So that's kind of where I see a lot of people as they've gone through this cycle one too many times, and they're ready to finally break out of that.
Yeah, and I know from my own personal experience, like that ready phase, it is the most uncomfortable. But every time that I look back at any change that's happened in my life, it is those moments when I'm in basically that place of almost inertia where I'm like, it's so heavy and the energy is so dense and not necessarily knowing what to do, but it's being in that moment and having that surrender where you can just let go and be like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I know that there's something bigger here, and just be in that space and allow that to be is where the transformation really happens. It can't happen without that space.
Yeah. And you can't just tell someone to be comfortable with the unknown. You can't just say that. You have to actually give them the tools. What does that look like in the moment? What are the practical? And this is what I mean by blending the practical with the sacred. It's like, really, how do you exactly do that? So that's a lot of in my workbook and in my one-on-one work with clients. It's really about bringing them those tools, and we talk about specific tasks that we are called to during each of those phases. And those tasks are what we can put our energy into, and it gives us that sense of focus and forward movement, even at a time where in many aspects we're standing still.
It'd be nice to have a set of step-by-step plans instead of just laying on the floor curled in a ball, bawling your eyes out, moving the energy.
Yeah,
those are my moments.
Yeah, that's helpful too. Sometimes we have to do that. But yeah, if you spend too much time there, it's going to be really tough. Yeah.
So what's the second step? We got ready and then set.
Yeah. So set, I think of more of actually mindset, and it is that time when you start to shift and you realize that, hey, I'm starting to figure out what I want. I'm starting to know what I don't want. I'm starting to know more about what I do want. And I'm actually feeling like I could take a few steps now. It's that coming out of the fog feeling that happens. And so I talk about a really exquisite gap tension that begins to build there, because in that phase you do start to identify what you want, and yet you're still where you are. So that place in between is this tension, and it is an actual force. It's actual energy. And that's a place, too, where people can get stuck and feel really uncomfortable and afraid, because that longing sets in and that desire. And so what I do is I really help them to use that gap tension energy in a way that it really feels productive and successful to really get that forward movement going. So that is that next phase, is the set, where you're starting to lay down the stepping stones for what's to come.
I just want to clear, because it was really hard to understand. You said gap tension energy. Is that what you called it? Like in the gap tension?
Yeah,
okay.
In the gap, like in a rubber,
Gotcha.
like when a rubber band is pulled, and it's got it's kinetic tension, and it's the potential. It's the energy of potential. Yeah, and so that's such a sweet spot, and it is about the potential in those moments, but it doesn't feel good. It does feel like we're kind of stretched and waiting and hanging,
Yeah, out of the comfort zone.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. And then you get to manifest, which I think is much more about allowing. And one of the quotes that I use to really reflect that phase the best is a quote from Mark Nepo, and he says, "The flower doesn't dream of the bee. It blossoms and the bee comes."
That's so true.
That is just so perfect for how I view the manifestation phase, which is, you are living the life that you want to live. You're doing and having and being all the things that you've desired, perhaps, or a good number of them. It's never going to be perfect. It's not about being perfect. And there's a flow that starts happening. Yeah. And then the cycle starts over again, because we are naturally expansive beings. We're wired to aspire. So even when we get to that next plateau, we enjoy it. We can hold gratitude for it. We can count our blessings, and at the same time, we can be open to the next phase, the next expansion. So then the ready phase can start all over again, and it's not a process where it's ready, set, manifest, done.
Yeah, no. I don't think there's ever a done.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a really cool program. I like that. So what surprised you about starting your business as being a life coach?
Yeah, well, practically speaking, it surprised me how much work it was. I mean, to be, as a solo entrepreneur, to be everything and do everything in your business when you weren't trained to be an accountant and a marketing PR person. And I mean, it is incredible. I have so much respect for all different kinds of solo entrepreneurs out there. It's a really, really tough thing to do. So that was surprising. That was quite a surprise. But the other piece I think that surprised me early on when I was a fledgling coach was I was so excited to talk to people about their dreams. And that was what I thought I would be doing, is like people would come to me with their dreams and I would help them pursue their dreams. That's what I thought it was all about. And then people would come to me and they would say, well, actually, I don't know what I want. And as a newbie coach, I would look at them and they would look at me. And there would be this silence. And then I would scramble in my brain for, okay, all these wonderful coach training questions and tools I'm supposed to be asking right now. But it really was this ongoing process of figuring out, how do you help people who really don't know what they want?
Right.
You know, without giving them the answer, because, of course, I don't have the answer. They do. But it's not surfacing yet. So how do you support someone through that time when they don't yet know, but they desperately want to know, and they're paying you to find out?
And so how did you help them do that? What did you figure out?
Well, I figured out that's really how Ready, Set, Manifest was born, because I realized that people needed that an acquaintance with the roadmap. They had to understand that where they were wasn't wrong or bad, that it was not a phase for them to be rushing through, and that, you know, they could embrace it, and that what could come when they embraced it, that they could actually come out on the other side much more stronger, much more clear, if they just pursued these tasks and sat with this for the time required, you know. And so, but you can't just have people sit and wait. It's got to be active waiting. And so giving them things, like I said, things to do, things to focus on, things that are about shifting energy and really connecting more deeply with themselves. And that's what I found was the most important set of skills, was anything that I could give them that connected them more to who they are, then what they want comes much more easily.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So in your opinion, what do you think stands in the way of people actually really being happy and living their bliss? What do you think is the key thing that's in most people's way?
I think it's two things. I think the first one is not believing that they're worthy of having, of having or doing the things that would bring them that happiness. I think that is at the root of most of unhappiness. And then if people are able to get past that, or they don't hold that belief, the other thing that holds them up is that the notion that they'll be happy when.
Right.
You know, like I'm going to wait until I have that degree, or until I find my soulmate, or until whatever, I'm making X number of dollars a year, then I will be happy. And it's this lack of understanding that happiness isn't tied to a circumstance. It's a way of life. It's a choice. Like you said in your opening, Mel, I love it. It is what we choose on a daily basis. It is not an experience that we are waiting to take place.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because, you know, it's still, no matter how happy I am, and as each day goes by, it's exponentially growing, but it's still a choice. Like, I still have to choose that I want to be happy more than anything else in situations that come up. A clear example will be when, my wife and I are having a disagreement or something, and, I start to feel uncomfortable inside my body, and then I remember my commitment to myself that, no, my happiness is my number one priority, and when I remember that, and then the shift is able to happen and the energy can dissipate. But it's a constant, continual choice. I have to choose it in many moments throughout the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. It's so true. And, we are deliberate creators, but we're also just random recipients. Good things happen to bad people. Bad things happen to good people. It's kind of weird to use those terms and
terms, right?
But it's true. We will experience random awfulness, and there's no way that we attracted that to ourselves. We didn't will that. We didn't slack off on our spiritual practices, and suddenly, boom, we're hit with something really terrible. I just think that there's a randomness to the mystery of the universe, and so, but it's not that we can control that, of course. So that when it happens, that's when the choice comes in. I absolutely love Carolyn Meese, and she talks about the dark night, right? And she says that the dark night doesn't come when the bad experience happens. The dark night comes when you can't get over what happened to you.
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. I love her.
Yeah. And it is true. It's because, and, you know, everybody listening, you, me, we've all had these awful, even very tragic losses and dark things that have happened to us. And then there's a choice, and we may not even realize that it is a choice. We may not know that that we've made the choice. You know what I mean? It may not be this conscious awareness, like I made the choice to be broken open instead of broken down.
Right.
But it happens that there is, and when the power comes in is when we can acknowledge and recognize those choice points, and we can say, oh my gosh, this is one of those moments. This is a moment when I can either choose to be broken open or broken down. What is my choice?
Yeah.
That's the power.
Oh, I love that. So talking about bliss, what does living your bliss mean to you and look like for you on a daily basis?
Honestly, I think it's just about anything that makes me feel more connected to myself and others. You know, and the others could be people, could be nature, could be spirit, but this sense of connection. It's the opposite of isolation. It's the opposite of lack. It's just the feeling of being full, being connected, and abundant.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I love having all the experts share what bliss means to them. It's awesome because there's so many definitions for people.
Yeah.
So, Debbie, we're just about out of time, and I know that you have a free gift that you have for our listeners, so I just want to give you a chance to tell everybody about it.
Yeah, I'm really happy to offer this to folks. So it's the e-version of my Ready, Set, Manifest workbook, and it's the whole workbook. It's slim, but it's powerful, and that will be available for you, I believe, on download, correct?
Yes. Yep. There'll be a link that's in this email when you click to listen to this interview. The link is in the same email for you.
Great.
Yeah, excellent. And do you have any last parting words you'd like to share wisdom with our audience before we go?
One word. It's a hyphenated word, self-compassion.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think when we make a mistake, when we slip up, when we're not as happy as we could be, when a random awful thing happens, we must practice self-compassion.
Yeah.
You know, and a little bit of it goes such a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everyone that happiness is an inside job, and it's equally available to everyone. We're living in a time now where we can choose to drop whatever baggage we've been carrying around. We can drop the old stories. We don't even need to know what they are. It just starts with a simple choice. You are powerful beyond measure, and all you need to do is tap into the divine power that created you and follow the guidance you're given. You were born to be happy, experience joy, and live an abundant, blissed-out, spacious life. I want to hear from you, so hit reply to this email and share your thoughts with me. Debbie, it's been such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great.